Hey, what's up, witches? It's been a while since I've done an intuitive tarot reading. I think the last one I did was around the autumn equinox, so I've been really wanting to do another one because we just passed Samhain or Halloween, which, if you're following the Celtic Wheel of the Year calendar, is the end of the year and beginning of the new year. If we're going by some of the more, I'm not even sure if it would fall under like a Celtic practice or more of a like Nordic practice, but I have also seen some calendars where the year ends at Samhain, October 31st, and then the new year technically doesn't begin until the rebirth of the sun at Midwinter. So right now we're kind of in this weird liminal space between the old year and the new, where it doesn't really fall into one or the other. And along with that, we're just getting some interesting energies stirring up this time of year. It's said that this period is also when the wild hunt is riding, and I have a whole video on that if you'd also like to check that out. But I just figured between that and this past Friday being 11/11, it would be a great time to just sit down and do another intuitive tarot reading with you guys to see what this weird, wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, liminal period in between the end of the old year and the beginning of the new has for us, and what we can be getting in tune with both within and without during this period of time. So let's get into it. So today I'm going to be changing it up a little bit, so bear with me here because I'm going to use a deck that I barely ever use, and so I'm not very familiar with it because it's deviating a little bit from that standard Rider-Waite format. But with this being kind of the spooky time of year, I wanted to use my wooden tarot, and then I'm also going to pull some oracle cards from my Well-Worn Path deck. Okay, the cards have been shuffled, so let's see what this time of the year holds in store for us. Page of Bones, God of Stones, and King of Stones. Bones in this deck are pentacles. So we have Page of Pentacles, and stones are wands. So we have two cards here from the suit of stones or wands. And not just that, but I want to say that the God of Stones is the ace. There does go Page, Knight, Queen, King, so God of Stones must be the ace card in this case. So we have the Ace of Wands or Stones and the King of Wands or Stones, along with a Page card. So I think this can kind of represent a journey. The Page, as I've said before, represents kind of a more youthful person or youthful outlook on things. So the Page is someone just starting off on a journey, could represent new beginnings, and with this being bones or pentacles, which is more related and grounded in the earthly world, the material world, and all that is contained therein. All those cards just speak of grounding to me, and so I think this could represent like an opportunity, perhaps with it being bones, an opportunity to kind of dig something up from the past and re-examine it and to begin something new. With it being pentacles or bones, something maybe more grounded in Midgard and the material world, like a project or a new career path. Maybe you're studying something new, exploring new avenues of learning, be that in school or more esoteric forms of learning. And I think that also ties into the other two cards being stones or wands, which is fire, passion, creativity. So now might be a good time of year to harness internal creative energies, because the king is the kind of the epitome of the suit. And here we have the ram, which gives me kind of like Aries energy as well. So that fire, that passion, that endurance of kind of maybe even being stubborn and pushing forward even when it's getting really difficult to. You gotta maintain that energetic ram energy. It represents confidence, enthusiasm, willpower. Now might be a time to tap into your intuition and harness those inner fires. And if you're not working on an external project, you could work on an internal one. Because the ace, or God in this case, kind of represents the energy of the suit at its fullest potential, like that potential energy. Wands, or stones in this case, represents feeling a great surge of energy or enthusiasm, which is kind of interesting because we're going into that time of year where the natural world around us, at least in my hemisphere, is starting to die back and decay and go dormant for the winter. But as we're kind of kindling those actual fires, those need fires to keep our bodies warm, we can also harness that energy for the spirit as well. This heralds the beginning of a wonderful new phase, and I think that's really perfect since I wanted to do this reading to bridge that gap between the old year on the Celtic calendar and the beginning of the new year. So it's that perfect time to harness that potential energy before the new year even begins and start working on those worldly applications in terms of using that inspiration to back up creative ventures and turn it toward maybe more worldly aspirations in terms of projects and careers. It's just that time of year where things might prove challenging, but it's that threshold of a new beginning. So let's pull like 3 more, and then I'll probably turn to the oracle cards. So here we have 1 of bones, building on that energy. And then we have plumes. Looks like the 10 of plumes and the 9. And plumes in this case are swords. So that's interesting because normally when I pull 10 of swords, I'm like, well, fuck my life then. Because in Rider-Waite, it's a guy like literally being stabbed in the back by 10 swords. So to me, it always kind of is a little bit of a foreboding card. But just as the year and all cycles must inevitably come to an end, the 10 of Swords also represents not just an inevitable ending, but also the promise of that new beginning. And so we see in the 10 of Bones here and the 10 of Swords, it's the completion of a cycle. So if Bones are pentacles, then we have the 10 of Pentacles. So it's an inevitable ending, and it might be a little bit of a bittersweet ending, especially with this time of year, maybe feeling a little bit more drab and dreary depending on where you're living. This card also represents security, abundance, and lasting happiness. It's that desire to create something permanent in our lives, even though all things must inevitably come to an end. But you can still harness this energy, this creative energy, to work on those things that you can establish in the material world that will stand the test of time and outlast this season outlast the relationships that might be coming to an end, the seasons and the cycles that might be coming to an end, and have some kind of lasting legacy. So even though some things might be ending and it could just be time for us to accept and come to terms with those yearly cycles, there's also a lot of potential energy contained not only within this time of year, but also within these cards, especially if we have the endurance to push through these feelings that might accompany the endings. So there's still a lot to be gained and to look back on and be satisfied with. And with the 9 of plumes being right next to the 10, this card can represent anxiety, despair, negative thoughts, that gloominess, that maybe feeling overwhelmed with this time of year and the ending of the cycles. But with this card, with the 10 being before it, it represents to me needing to let go of these things. This is what we need to be shedding and letting go of, is the anxiety, the despair. Because with the swords or plumes, it's the card of air and intellect and thought. And so it represents that a lot of these things that are plaguing us and making us feel overwhelmed are only in the mind. And that in truth, you have nothing to fear. It might just be that dark cloud that's hanging over you right now, is clouding your judgment and making everything seem that way. You might be having bad dreams, or finding it difficult to relax, or conversely finding it difficult to enjoy these creative endeavors and these projects because of that lingering sense of depression. But once you realize that this is the time to be shedding those things and letting go of them, it has a lot of potential payoff in the long run. You don't have to let these things control you. So now that that's done, let's shuffle my well-worn Path Oracle deck here. Let's see. So we have the Pentacle, the Broom, and the Green Man. And let's see what the guidebook has to say about these things. So the Pentacle in traditional witchcraft represents all of the different elements contained within a circle of the human spirit, mind, or willpower. They're all united in balance and harmony and working as one. And with it also being tied in tarot to the element of earth, it represents stability and a solid foundation. It's a card of strength, protection, endurance, and fortitude. And I think that also ties back to this card featuring the ram on it, which is also to me conveying a very Uruz rune energy. And we'll pull some runes too before the end of this. But that's definitely what this is kind of signaling to me, is that endurance, fortitude. We have to power through this liminal season and get to those new beginnings that are in store for us in the coming year. This pentacle is a card of manifestation within the material world and the channel through which we can manifest our objectives by harnessing those powers of the elements. And so it represents achieving that sense of balance and equilibrium. The broom is also an important tool of the witch in traditional witchcraft, but not just for flying. It represents rising above our own limited vision and perception, just as was spoken of in the 9 of plumes or swords. Whatever's plaguing us might be largely in our head, or if we're feeling overwhelmed by things going on in our day-to-day life, we need to just step back, go within, and rise above our own limited vision and perspective. We need to look for connections in what appear to just be mundane circumstances. It calls on us to deal with what is happening instead of investing energy into understanding why. So as I said, the broom is not just for flying, it's also used for sweeping. This is the time of year for out with the old and in with the new. And I don't know about you, but I just did an enormous cleansing on my entire house to harness this energy and move out all of that stagnant energy, whatever is no longer serving us, whatever might be leading to these thoughts of feeling overwhelmed. It's time to sweep it all out and get rid of it. Clean and clear away that mental debris, that actual debris in your house. I had to do a very thorough house cleaning to get rid of a lot of clutter in my house before we did the cleansing, because it was, and including just like clearing out cobwebs, getting rid of dead plants, broken objects, anything that's just holding on to dead, stagnant energy and is no longer serving us, whether it be mental, spiritual, physical. Let it go. And then we have, interestingly enough, for this more dormant time of year, when there's less greenery around, we have the Green Man, which is tying back to this Ten of Pentacles, God of Wands, all of these cards. I think this is kind of a good summation for all of the potential in this reading, because he represents growth, prosperity, abundance, the tenacity of life. Even now, when winter is coming, snow is falling on the ground, the plants are dying back, decaying and going dormant for the year, life finds a way. Things aren't dead. They're going to be back in the spring. Things are going to come back even better than they were before. It's a card of survival and assured renewal. This time of year will pass, and the sun will return, and light and life will return to the world again. And it's important to remember that. It says, look to the ways of nature as your teacher, and to the spirit of nature for encouragement and motivation. And I think as pagans, it's important for us to recognize and venerate and follow these yearly cycles. Just as nature is kind of taking a break for the year, it's okay for us to let go of things, set down our burdens, and just take a little bit of a break during this time of year. Clean out the old and start collecting ourselves again to decide how we want to be harnessing this potential energy going forward into the birth of the new year at Midwinter. So before I leave you, let's pull like one rune stone from the bag and see if we can kind of sum everything up here. Let's go. Oh, here we go. Gebo. That's a great one. Especially for this time of year as we go into the holiday seasons and our gift exchanges with friends and family and loved ones. And it's also that season where the wild hunt is riding, the veil between the worlds is thin because we're in this liminal space. So the ancestors are more reachable and easier to connect with than ever. So it's important to not only, I think, honor and exchange gifts with the living, but also with our departed loved ones, our spirits of the beloved dead, and with our gods and with the land as well, because Gebo represents that equivalent exchange, that give and take. And if you are following kind of Nordic or Germanic paganism like me, hospitality and gift giving are a big thing within the culture, and the Havamal goes into great detail about the importance of a gift deserves a gift. And in the case of venerating the gods, nothing will be given that you will not repay. So it's very important to be giving these gifts and these exchanges of energy, to be giving thanks for all that you have been given in this year as we go into the next year, and just maintaining that connection and that relationship. So I think that's a perfect note to end this reading off on, and I hope that it was insightful for you all. Thanks for kind of bearing with me as I explore a deck that I am very unfamiliar with, as I'm trying to kind of branch out of my Rider-Waite comfort zone. I rely a lot on the symbolism contained in the illustrations of the cards to help with my intuitive readings, so I might have had to break out the guidebooks a little bit more on this one, but I think it was an interesting and insightful reading for this time of year. So until next time, stay classy, pagans.